This is Adrian Alex Poe, and in this video we're going to be talking about the Terminator franchise, and I'm going to pitch to you a new Terminator sequel that I tried to think of. So basically, if a movie producer came up to me and said, okay, we're picking you to write the next Terminator sequel, give us something, give us a basic idea of where you want the story to go with the characters, and just give us something. So in order to do that, we're going to be focusing on the Terminator franchise, specifically only 1 and 2, because that is the franchise in my opinion. We're going to be ignoring Terminator 3, Salvation, and Sega Genesis. And I don't care if James Cameron endorsed, I think, Genesis. I mean, you pay a guy enough money, he'll say anything. So also, he's, Terminator 6, a new Terminator reboot or remake or whatever it is, a sequel to the second sequel of the franchise is coming out. Here's some screenshots you can take a look at. You got Linda Hamilton still looking like a badass. Under her, it's another character. Really don't know who she is, but she looks pretty cool. And then if you look at the top picture, we're at the cyber cafe somewhere in Mexico. And if you look right in the center, the guy with the blue flannel shirt is supposed to be the new Terminator. But other than that, we really don't know anything about the movie. Director is the guy who directed Deadpool. So he's directing this. And then James Cameron is actually involved in this movie, but not fully. In an interview, he basically said, like, I'm just going to be coming in on the weekends, and approving or disapproving, the story ideas. So I'm sure he's writing a little bit of it. But when I looked up on IMDb, if that's even accurate, there's like 4 or 6 different writers, including the director. He's having an input on it too. So I don't even know what's going to happen. But I'm assuming because Cameron is involved in it, and he wasn't involved in any other of the sequels, that this one is probably going to be, better than 3, Salvation, and Genesis. So for my Terminator movie pitch, we're going to look at one of my 2 favorite movies of all time, Terminator 1 and 2, and we're going to focus on the characters and look at their evolution throughout 1 and 2, or their character arcs and developments, and how they changed, basically turning good to bad, bad to good. And also, if we look at the characters, they're supposed to symbolically represent other characters. So we're going to take a look at that, and based on the characters and their arcs, that's how I'm going to pitch my movie, because it really writes itself. If you just pay attention to what happens with the characters in 1 and 2, it tells you that what's going to happen in the sequel, or what is supposed to happen. Because apparently the screenplay writers of 3, Salvation, and Genesis did not look at 1 and 2, because if they did, then those sequels wouldn't have came out so bad, especially the characters. So let's take a look, and I'm going to pitch my movie for you. Let's first take a look at Sarah Connor, and I'm going to show you how she turns into Kyle Reese. She represents symbolically Kyle Reese from the first movie. So I'm going to give you examples, so just bear with me. So in Terminator 1, you got Kyle Reese, who was a badass soldier sent from the future to protect Sarah Connor. Now, in Terminator 1, Sarah Connor was just a regular girl, waitress in suburbia, minding her own business. But in Terminator 2, she turns into a badass soldier, like Kyle Reese from the first movie. So here's some more examples of scenes from Terminator 1 and 2. So you have the scene, where Kyle Reese, he just comes through the time machine, and he grabs a gun, and he's pointing at the cop, and he's like, what year is it? And blah, blah, blah. And then in the second movie, you have a scene after Sarah Connor, breaks out of the mental hospital. She pulls out a gun, and that cop stops in the underground garage, and like she shoots the window and she points the gun at him and is like, get out of the car now. So see, like the two scenes kind of like mirror each other. Then you have the scene where Kyle Reese is at Tech Noir and he like finds the Terminator, Schwarzenegger Terminator, and he like open fires at him like a badass, like shoots him out the broken window. And then you have the same scene basically at the end of the Terminator 2 with Sarah Connor when she's like shooting the T-1000 with the shotgun, like looking like a badass. So that kind of symbolizes that she's Kyle Reese too. So also when Kyle Reese is arrested at the police station, and then Dr. Silverman comes and interviews him, and Kyle Reese is like trying to explain all this crazy stuff, like, yes, I'm a soldier from the future, and I have to protect Sarah Connor because nuclear holocaust is going to come, and there's a time machine, and there's a Terminator, and Dr. Silverman looking at him like, this guy is crazy. He even says like, I can make a career out of this guy. And then you see Kyle Reese on the TV screen, and he's freaking out, and he's like yelling at Sarah Connor through the TV, and he's like, he's not gonna stop. He's gonna come after you. He's gonna kill you. And then all the cops are like holding him back, and it's crazy. So what happens in number 2? Exactly the same thing happens to Sarah Connor in number 2. She's at the mental hospital. She's getting interviewed by Dr. Silverman. She's even videotaped on the TV screen. And then, she's trying to plead her case to see her son John Connor, to Dr. Silverman. And he's like, no, I'm going to keep you here for 6 more months. And she freaks out, leaps over the table, strangles him. And the orderlies have to, tackle her and hold her back. And she's screaming like, you're all going to die, whatever. So basically it's the same scene mirroring each other. And then I showed you a picture basically at the bottom right corner where you see Kyle Reese from the first movie of a flashback of a nightmare dream he had of him being in the future looking like a badass soldier with his gun. And then Terminator 2, you got Sarah Connor in the desert, looking like a badass soldier with her gun. And so I hopefully proved to you that Sarah Connor from Terminator 2 is actually Kyle Reese from Terminator 1. Next, let's take a look at John Connor. And this one's going to be a little bit harder to prove, but I'm going to do my best. So, John Connor is supposed to be Sarah Connor from Terminator 1, before she turns into a badass. So let's look at a couple of examples. So you start off Terminator 2, you got John. He's just a regular kid, with foster parents, just whatever problems he's dealing with. But he's just a regular kid in suburbia, just like Sarah Connor in number 1. She was just a regular waitress girl in suburbia, minding her own business. They're even riding on motorcycles to symbolically show you, like visually show you, like, see, hint, hint. Also, some scenes we can look at. You had the scene where Kyle Reese gets injured towards the end of the movie, and then he's really weak, and Sarah Connor basically has to like carry him around, help him out. And right at the end, when they go to that Cyberdyne robot place or whatever factory, there's that scene where he's like collapsing, he's passing out, and she's like, "Get up on your feet, soldier." So it also kind of mirrors in number 2 where John is helping out his mom. She gets injured towards the end, and he's basically like carrying her around, helping her out. Some other scenes. You have, where else? Which should I start with? The Tech Noir scene in the first movie where Sarah Connor's there, and Schwarzenegger is coming to hunt her. And if you look at the lights, like the pinkish, purplish lights, and then in number 2, you got the scene where John Connor is at the arcade, and he's in that game, Afterburner, if that's what it's called. And if like the camera when he zooms in on his face or inside the actual capsule game, there's like flashing pink, um, pink lights. That's kind of supposed to symbolize the Tech Noir scene in number one, and also the Terminator, the T-1000 is like hunting for him, and that's where he finds them, and he has to run away, just like the Tech Noir scene in number one. So also you have the scene in number one where Sarah Connor like is at the hotel where with Kyle Reese, and she calls her mom. But then you find out, and I couldn't find the picture, but you find out that the Terminator actually killed her mom, and he's on the phone talking to her in his mom's voice because they can replicate voices. Well, in number two, John Connor calls home to see talk to his foster parents to warn them, but the T-1000 already killed them, and he's on the phone, mutated or replicated his mom, or his foster mom, and he's also talking in the voice of the foster mom, and so there you go, that mirrors each other. Another scene where they're in the hotel room in number one, Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, and there's that real heartwarming moment where Kyle is like, "I love you, Sarah. I came through time for you. I love you, and I always will." Blah blah blah. Well, in number two, when Sarah Connor like is about to kill Miles Dyson, but then doesn't do it, and then John shows up, and she starts crying, and John is like trying to calm her down, and he's like, "Don't worry, Mom, everything's gonna be okay." And there's a heartwarming moment, and then Sarah actually says like, "I love you, John, and I always will." So there you go. They're mirroring kind of obviously different relationships, and mother son and blah blah blah. So two more scenes I want to talk about. Little scenes here and there. In Terminator 2, when John is like trying to, it's early in the movie when he's with his friend and they try to get the money out of the ATM, and he sees the picture of his mom, and the friend's like, "Yo, what happened to your mom? Like your real mom?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, she's crazy. She tried to break into Cyberdyne, but she got caught and shot, and now she's in a mental hospital." Well, what does John do in the second movie? With the help of the Terminator and his mom, they break into Cyberdyne. So you see what I'm saying? Then also another scene, just a little thing I wanted to point out in number one, where early on in the movie, Sarah Connor's like, tending to Kyle Reese's wound, and she, ties a bandage on the arm, and he's like, "Ow, too tight." Well, in the second movie, the same thing happens with Sarah Connor when she gets shot, and during the chase scene, and they get into the car, and John tends to her wounds, ties a bandage on her leg too tight. So hopefully I did a good job of proving to you that John Connor from Terminator 2 is actually Sarah Connor, his mom, from Terminator 1. So let's finish off with the rest of the characters and then get to the movie pitch. So in this one, we're going to focus on how characters turn from good to bad or bad to good. So for example, Dr. Silverman in the first movie, he was good. He was just sent there to do his job, to interview Kyle Reese, and then he said he's crazy. He reports back to Sarah Connor, and she like listens to him, takes his opinion into consideration. So she was there. He was there to like calm her down and just figure out what's going on. And he even says like, "Oh, this guy's nuts. A psychiatrist can really build a career off of this or make a career," and that's exactly what he does in number two. Which in number two, he's the bad guy. So he has Sarah Connor locked up in the mental institution, and I talked about the scenes where she's trying to ask to see her son, but he's just keeping her there for his benefit, to write books or articles or, make a name for himself. And she's always trying to like hurt him, stab him in the knee and trying to escape, and she ends up escaping. And so he's like the real bad guy in the second movie. And so you see how the roles reversed from good to bad. Also in the first movie, you have the T-800 model. He was sent back to kill Sarah Connor, so he's the bad guy, the evil one. But he's technically in Terminator 2. you have, he's supposed to represent the T-1000, who is the bad guy in Terminator 2, and you even have the scene in Terminator 1 at the end of the movie, or towards the end of the movie, where he like gets into that truck and he tells the passenger like, get out, or whatever. And then in the second movie, you have the T-1000 jumping into the helicopter, and he tells the pilot, get out. So see, they mirror each other as the bad guys. Now, in the second movie, they turn from bad to good. So the T-800 model, Schwarzenegger, he's the good guy, and he even has like that line. He was sent there to save John Connor, to protect John Connor, and then he says, come with me if you want to live, or whatever. Sorry about the impression. I don't know if it's good, but and then also in the first movie, you have Kyle Reese, who was supposed to like, mildly represent the Terminator, especially if you didn't know he was human, but he was a badass soldier sent back to protect Sarah Connor, and he even says the line at the Tech Noir, come with me if you want to live. So they're exactly the same character. So there you go. So based on everything I talked about with the characters, role reversals, it should give you an idea now of what my movie idea is for the Terminator sequel. So let's get to my Terminator movie pitch. So here is my Terminator sequel movie pitch. This is just a basic, story concept and basic characters, nothing too deep. It's called Terminator Prophecy. Do-do-do-do-do. Da-na-na-na. Okay, here we go. So, it starts off John Connor with his mom, Sarah Connor, who remains a badass, laying low somewhere in Mexico. Both always on the lookout for a Terminator. John is skinny, wiry, cagey, just like his dad, Kyle Reese. He's just living each day, hustling and trying to avoid the drug cartels. They prevented Judgment Day, but the future is still unknown. John seems lost with no more purpose, so to ease the pain and the constant fear of a Terminator at the turn of every corner, he turns to drugs and, drinks. He almost overdoses. He says, my two choices are to live in a life of constant fear right now, or in a nuclear holocaust in the future. So he almost overdoses, and Sarah, saves him, stops him from overdosing, sobers him up, and gets him clean enough where he decides to join the army. Now you could cut all that out and just have him, be in the army already. So, in basic training, he comes across Miles Dyson's son, Danny Dyson, who also joined the army. Due to his anger over his father's death, he attacks John in a rage, blaming him for his father's death, demanding to know the truth. So that's the story between them. John is an excellent soldier with natural leadership skills, weapons expert thanks to his mom, and impressive strategic battle knowledge in simulated combat. John quickly made squad leader. His drill sergeant and the higher up ranking officials or officers are all impressed, and he is the most popular among his fellow platoon grunts, all except Danny, who is the second best soldier but wants revenge. Their drill sergeant picks the both of them sworn enemies for a new advanced military program. So now John and Danny, they are shown the latest in military tech and weapons. They see new advanced body armor, early concept laser guns, driverless military vehicles like Hummers, tanks, and drones. They witness some vehicles being remote controlled on what looks like an abandoned small city left in ruins. The sergeant explains it used to be an old nuke site, now called Nuketown. They reconstructed a few city blocks and tested different weapons, bombs, and even conduct real-life battle scenarios with troops. John asks what that pyramid-shaped building at the top of the hill is. He is told its nerve center, the mini brains of the whole drone system. They can program any weapon system to do anything they want from there. Danny really wants a chance to remote pilot a drone. He takes a quick try and does outstanding. He asks them, what do you call this new prototype drone program? They tell him the program is so new they don't even have a name for it yet. At this point, John becomes suspicious and knows there are more things the military is hiding. Later that night, John sneaks out of the barracks to further investigate the top secret tech, but is followed by Danny. Soon John realizes he is being followed, and they have a confrontation, but both must stay quiet and hide from the night security. They are cordial with each other long enough to meet up with a scientist slash friend of John's who can let them into the actual top secret part of the facility. The friend tells Danny he is sorry about his father, Miles Dyson, which he greatly respected, and his work was considered a mentor since they worked together alongside his father. He worked alongside his father, and he helped him with the big microchip. So for this reason, the scientist friend will show John and Danny. He will show them it. And what is it? So the scientist friend shows them the robotic arm from Terminator 2 that got caught in the large gear at the metalworks. Danny asks, "Where did you get it?" He responds, "I asked them once and they told me don't ask." John tells them exactly where they got the arm from, but neither believe him. The scientist tells them based on the arm prototype, they build mechanical limbs for amputees with missing arms and legs. Danny jumps in and mentions he heard about using microchip implants in the brain connected to the nerves where the POWs can move the robotic hand with their mind. He is told about working on a new program when a soldier gets critically injured on the battlefield, they replace his damaged limbs and organs with robotic ones, like the arm, and they go right back on to fight. John points out, what if they reprogram the chip in their brain to control them and force them to fight or do anything you want them to do? John asks, do you have a Terminator hiding here somewhere? Both the scientist and Danny look at John like, yo, what's he talking about? He's crazy. What's a Terminator? The scientist says eventually they want to remove the human element and just have robots doing all the fighting. You will have no more human death in war. But that future is very, very long time from now. The scientist does show them one last thing before they leave. A small glass container filled with a few drops of a silver substance, liquid metal, that was collected at different locations throughout the city. And all three gaze at it, and it actually reacts and moves around in the glass a little bit. John freaks out and makes noise. They get caught by the night security. Now John and Danny are in huge trouble, each separately interrogated by high-ranking officers. John, being recorded by a video camera, can see himself on a small TV screen. He is asked, "How do you know the arm was found at the metal factory?" John says, "'Cause I was there that night, just like I know you found some of the liquid metal at the mall, at the mental hospital, and Cyberdyne building." The officer interjects, the building that you were involved in blowing up. John also tells him he knows about the Skynet drone program system and Cyberdyne. The military officer interrupts him and says, "We don't even have a name for the program, but Skynet sounds catchy." John warns him not to continue the program and proceeds to tell him exactly what the T-800 told him, that Skynet will become self-aware and take over, and they'll bomb Russia. The program will bomb the Russians, and the Russians will bomb and attack the USA to make it look like, to start a war and cause a nuclear holocaust. The military officer asks if John is a spy. John says no and begins to tell the story of how his father, Kyle Reese, was sent back in time to save his mother so she could give birth to him, but was killed by a Terminator T-800. And the officer looks at John like, this guy is crazy. So then the officer asks more military personnel to enter into the room and listen to this crazy talk. John continues to tell about how years later, two more Terminators were sent back from the future, one to protect him from a more advanced liquid metal Terminator, the T-1000, and they stop Judgment Day. Everyone begins to laugh at him and call and demand for a Section 8. Then another soldier enters to listen to more crazy time-traveling stories, but he has two Terminator robotic arms. John freaks out, believing he is an actual Terminator sent there to kill him. John grabs one of the officer's sidearms and attacks him. Everyone swarms John, but he gets off one shot, clipping the suspected android. He is not a Terminator, but a wounded warrior amputee with prosthetic robotic arms. John is arrested and dragged out in handcuffs. He is eventually charged with attempted murder and sent to a military prison and ordered to undergo rigorous psychiatric evaluation and treatments. So John Connor is locked up in the military prison. He goes to his first scheduled psychiatric evaluation and finds out his new shrink is Dr. Silberman. John, filled with hate, instantly chokes him against the wall and says, "You think you can do to me what you did to my mother?" Dr. Silverman says, "No, I believe her now, and you too. After I saw that cop or whatever he was liquefying through the metal bars, I believe everything, and I'm here to help you break out." John lets him go and asks, "How are you going to do that?" Dr. Silverman says, "With help from your mom and her Terminator friend." So they team up, and then Sarah shows up with, now you have three options that you can, go with to figure out who the good and bad Terminators are. So option one is you have an aged Arnold T-800 Terminator model who is there to protect John. Following them is another T-1000 Terminator model who is there to kill John. Option two, you have a normal Arnold-looking T-1000 liquid metal Terminator model who is there to protect John. Following them is a new, more advanced Terminator, the T-8000 model, who is there to kill John. Or option three, you have a bad Arnold T-1000 liquid metal Terminator model who is there to kill John. Following them is a new, more advanced Terminator T-8000 model who is there to protect John. So, based on like the first movie where the Arnold Terminator was bad, but then in the second one he was good, it makes sense for him to turn bad, and then you can make him more advanced, like make him a T-1000 liquid Terminator, or you could just keep him good, but make him more advanced. So those are the options you can pick from, or you can come up with other ideas. So let's continue the story. A riot breaks out in the prison, in the whole prison, as John, Dr. Silverman, Sarah, and the good Terminator try to escape while being chased by the bad Terminator. Both Terminators fight, but all the inmates attack the bad Terminator, and he massacres dozens of prisoners as he locates John Connor, kind of like the scene from the first movie at the police station. John and his mom and everyone becomes trapped, but Dr. Silberman sacrifices himself and is killed by the bad Terminator, allowing John, Sarah, and the good Terminator to escape with their lives. So now, once John has escaped from the military prison, John tells his mom everything he saw at the military base about Cyberdyne, Skynet program, and says they must break in and destroy everything, including the mini brain nerve center. They think up a plan. John forms a small army of military buddies he made at the boot camp who also are against the drone system program. Turns out they are some of the future soldiers, that grow up and all that. Along with Sarah, she brings a small army of her friends and mercenaries from Mexico, and you can't forget the good Terminator tagging along. Alright, so they break into the military base, easily neutralizing the handful of military security. They steal some of the advanced weapons, guns, body armor, and vehicles, and head over to the nerve center building at the top of the hill. They set explosive charges in the mini brain and just need to leave, but the bad Terminator shows up. John and his men hop in a plane or a chopper or some advanced flying vehicle, waiting for them at the rooftop. The alarm goes off throughout the entire military base. Their cover is blown. The two Terminators battle each other, buying John some time to start the liftoff. But in the fight, the propellers are damaged. John, his mom, and his men are forced to crash land in the ruins of Nuketown. Suddenly, Cyberdyne reinforcements arrive in the form of dozens of remote piloted vehicles, tanks, and drones, along with a platoon of half-man, half-robot-limbed soldiers. A massive back-and-forth battle erupts that looks eerie, similar to the future human versus Skynet war that Kyle Reese had nightmares about. You see what's going on now? So once this mini-war breaks out, we go back to the nearby military base where Danny Dyson remote pilots a drone, while his superior military officer with the robot arms from earlier at the prison watches behind him. Danny flies over the battlefield in search of John Connor. They spot him alongside his mom. The officer orders the strike, but Danny hesitates and doesn't want to kill his mother. I guess he has a change of heart, because killing her is not going to bring his father back. So suddenly they spot a half-man, half-machine zeroing in on John and his mother. Danny fires a rocket, killing the half-man, half-machine soldier. Now Danny and the officer struggle over control of the joystick of the drone. So Danny sees the bad Terminator appear on the battlefield, heading toward John. Danny overpowers the officer and takes back control of the drone. He locks his sights on the bad Terminator, but the officer attacks Danny from behind, causing the rocket to be fired, missing the bad Terminator. It instead heads toward John. Sarah sacrifices herself, pushes her son just out of the blast radius as she is taken out and dies. In the commotion, Danny pulls out the officer's gun and fires, wounding him, not killing him. Danny then takes control of the drone, and I guess he ran out of rockets or something, so he crashes it right on top of the bad Terminator, taking him out. But soon after, the bad Terminator rises out of the burning wreckage and continues his pursuit after John. John is devastated, so the good Terminator and what is left of John's men all fall back to the nerve center building. The Cyberdyne army backs off with the drones and I guess the military vehicles, as not to cause any damage to the building, because they don't want to damage the brain, the mini brain. So they send in the human troops after John to bring him back dead or alive. John gets a radio call from Danny saying he can fly a chopper onto the roof to get them out, but there is too much gunfire. John gets an idea and goes to the mini brain room and reprograms the drone system and the microchips in the half-man, half-machine robot soldiers to attack the Cyberdyne army. This creates enough cover, and they wait for the evac lift. And finally, let's take a look at the ending. So at this moment, the bad Terminator shows up and blocks John's only way up to the roof. The only way to kill the bad Terminator is to use a super advanced future weapon. The only thing close to that is a large, clunky laser gun prototype. They point it at the bad Terminator and press the trigger. The laser beam obliterates the robot, and there you go, that's how you kill the final bad Terminator. John, the good Terminator, and a few of his men meet Danny on the roof. Danny suggests nuking the whole site. It's the only way to be sure. John likes that plan, so all hop into the chopper except a good Terminator who explains he must stay behind and be destroyed with the rest of Skynet and Cyberdyne. Him and John say their goodbyes, and the chopper takes off. Now, here are two options for the endings. I couldn't decide. Maybe you could help me out. So here's what I came up with. The normal ending 1, Danny drops the mini nuke, destroying the nerve center building and the mini brain and turning everything else into dust. Later they find the Terminator microchip from the good Terminator, but not fully destroyed, and that's how they use it to create Skynet, blah blah blah. So the twist ending number 2 that I came up with, a little bit more deeper, I guess. Danny drops the mini nuke, but turns out it's not a nuclear bomb, just a regular small bomb, or not even a bomb at all. It's nothing. It doesn't do any damage. Danny still hates John and still part of the Cyberdyne military as the second best soldier picked for the top secret program, who just wanted to capture John alive so that the military can get all the knowledge he knows about the future Skynet program, weapons, and Terminators. The good Terminator is not destroyed, and the military uses his chip to create Skynet and more Terminators. Hence, the self-fulfilling prophecy. And then you can have, Danny take over his father's, work, and then actually create the microchip again with the help of that scientist friend who was a mentor of his father, or do something else and whatever. So that's basically my Terminator sequel movie pitch, Terminator Prophecy. Hence the self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what it stands for. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know if my Terminator movie pitch was any good. Do you have any ideas you could add, or what should change, all that? Hit me up on Facebook and Twitter. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and until next time, remember my motto: where story comes first.